Hello everybody, Yajay here from Heightening Awareness. I'm going to talk to you a little bit today about the current coronavirus outbreak and ways that concerned individuals can protect themselves and make themselves feel a little bit more safe during this current time. Now, I talked a little bit before in a previous video about what the coronavirus is and where it comes from, or where we think it comes from, and why it's able to hurt us and do all this kind of stuff. But now I'm going to address protecting ourselves. So there's a lot of people right now who are walking around who are really worried about coronavirus transmission and who are worried about getting the virus or spreading the virus. And this is a very legitimate concern, very, very legitimate. However, there is a lot of belief that these types of medical masks are going to protect you from getting the virus. This is not the case. These are a really, really good thing for everybody to be wearing if they're worried, but not because they protect from contraction, but because they actually protect from transmission. Now, these types of masks are designed to hold back respiratory droplets and aerosols. Aerosols are little solid particles that might come out and hang in the air. These masks are designed to hold those back and prevent those from spreading over large distances, particularly during medical procedures, such as surgeries and dental cleanings, right? Everybody's seen a doctor wearing these kinds of things before when they're examining them. This is really to make sure the doctor doesn't give you something rather than you giving the doctor something. Now, this is still good for you to wear because of that fact. If you're in an area where there are a lot of coronavirus cases present and you're really concerned that you're going to pick the virus up, wearing one of these masks is actually going to protect the people that you are then exposed to from getting the virus from you. Now, if you live in a confined space with somebody else who has the virus or might have the virus, then wearing a medical mask is definitely helpful and very important because it will prevent you from taking that virus out of the home and giving it to other people, but it will also prevent you from spreading any other viruses that you might be carrying to the infected person with their already weak sort of health state and potentially making them sicker. Now, if you're living in places where nobody is infected, but you might have someone who's elderly or already has a disease condition such as lupus or HIV or any of these various diseases that weaken the immune system, or if you're living with somebody, like I said, who's very elderly, you live with somebody who's maybe very, very, very young, and you're worried about giving them the virus, then these masks are helpful. But if you're worried about getting the virus and you want to wear a mask to protect yourself, you actually need a respirator. Medical masks such as these simply are not going to help. That's just not what they do. The other thing that is really important to keep in mind with the current SARS outbreak is how much time you're spending in closed spaces with people and whether those people are coughing and sneezing and whether you're coughing and sneezing. So the virus transmits via respiratory droplets. As far as we know, aerosols that I mentioned before are actually not capable of holding living coronavirus from the current outbreak. But respiratory droplets, these little bits of moisture that come out as you speak or sneeze or cough or any of that kind of stuff, are capable of carrying the virus. And these particles then, if they come in direct contact with a sensitive membrane, will then allow the virus to get into your body. So of course, most people know that this includes the mouth and the nose. Some people don't necessarily consider that this also could be the eyes or potentially other openings in various parts of the body, depending on the individual and how aggressively you might be putting your hand in there. But this is how the virus gets into us, and this is the thing that we really need to watch out for. So if you are coughing and you are sneezing, it's really important that you either have a mask such as this or that you're making sure to cough into a very closed part of the body, something like this. Do not cough into your hands. Do not cough out into the air. As I mentioned in a previous video, the coronavirus incubation period is up to 12 days. So even if you don't feel sick right now, it could be possible that you're carrying the virus and coughing and sneezing is spreading it around whether or not you realize that you're actually a carrier. Now, these respiratory droplets can spread a few feet into the air. They can land on other people. They can land on surfaces. And from what we understand, there's at least a 3 to 12 minute period where the virus will be able to survive out in the environment without a host cell. So for at least that period of time, if you sneeze or cough and your droplets go out onto a surface, then anybody who comes along for the next 10 minutes or so and touches that is now putting some of that virus onto their hand. And this is where then, going and touching the eye or the nose or the mouth or whatever it might be would then introduce this virus into the system and allow it to spread and infect other people. So it's really important that we're just all very conscious of this. And it's also important that we try not to stay in confined spaces. Now, it's the winter, and I know everybody's really cold, and you want to take transit, and you want to take buses, and you want to stay inside as much as possible. But it's actually very important in general, whether or not it's the winter, to spend time outside, to spend time not in confined spaces with other people. Now, this is generally of concern in the winter. This is how the cold and the flu tend to spread all over the place, and really why it is cold and flu season is because people are spending so much time in confined spaces. So as much as possible, it's really good to get out there, to walk around. I know it's cold, but not spending time in the subway, not spending time on the bus is really important. Even things like getting in the elevator, this goes beyond the scope of just being winter. Even when you get in an elevator because you don't want to take the stairs, you're now putting yourself in a very closed and confined space with people. And if they sneeze or they cough and there's respiratory droplets, like almost guaranteed you're going to come in contact with somebody if you're in that small of a space right with them when they're coughing. Now, the other thing to keep in mind, as I mentioned, is sort of, if you touch something and you go for your body or whatnot, the need to wash the hands, to maybe in this current situation with the coronavirus, the use of hand sanitizer might actually be advised, whereas, just for general sort of problems, it's actually not the best idea. But those types of hygienic practices and just being cognizant of what sort of dirt you're exposing the inside of your body to. Now, fortunately, as of February 24th, 2020, there have only been 10 confirmed cases in Canada, the majority of them being in Toronto. So for those of you who are Canadian citizens or who live in the Toronto area, the risk of being exposed to the virus is actually quite small. In the United States, as of February 24th, there were 53 confirmed cases, the majority of them being in California. Now, again, this is actually quite a small number. So generally speaking, the risk of exposure is somewhat low, but that does not mean that we should not at least be aware of the possibility of it happening. And this kind of again touches on the 12-day incubation period, where just because 10 cases are confirmed in Canada or 53 cases are confirmed in the United States doesn't mean that there aren't other people walking around carrying the virus who just maybe have not confirmed that they're sick yet, or potentially somebody maybe is sick, but the symptoms and everything that they're happening, it's not super serious. If you have a very strong immune system or you've had a lot of exposure to various types of coronaviruses in your life, you are at a much lower risk for developing severe acute respiratory symptoms. So you could be very, very sick and go, oh, I have the flu, when in reality you might actually be sick with the coronavirus. And maybe these people just aren't telling doctors, or they're not admitting themselves to the hospital because they don't feel that it's necessary. Now, if you are one of those people who is sick, let's assume that you know that you're sick. Let's assume that you don't know that you're sick. Let's talk about both cases, because the way to handle it is pretty much the same. Isolate yourself from other people. Do not come into contact with other people. Do not go spending lots of time with other healthy people. And most importantly, get lots of rest. Drink lots of water. Eat good, healthy, whole, nutrient-dense food. It's very much the same as what you would do to try and treat yourself if you had a extremely serious cold, or if you happen to get a mild flu. A lot of this sounds like common sense, but people don't always think about it. So just a little quick reminder there: if you're sick, take good care of yourself, because that's how you get healthy. Now, there isn't a whole heck of a lot more to know unless people really want to get into the specifics of what's going on at a molecular level with this virus. But looking at some of the genomic analysis that we have and all that kind of stuff. I'm very happy to answer any questions that anybody has on this. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to let me know. Drop it down there. That would be great. If there's enough, I might even make another video. But I'm really just trying to help inform everybody who doesn't have the information about what's going on, so that we can all feel a little bit safer and not let this outbreak really have an effect on us the way it definitely is having an effect on China right now. I send my thoughts out to the Chinese people, and I pray for them, but we will be okay. The fatality rate of the 2003 SARS epidemic was almost 10%, and the current fatality rate with the coronavirus of 2019 is less than 2%. So, despite the fact that this still is a very serious problem, we have, as a species and as a society of humans, seen things like this before. We have dealt with them, and those were actually more serious than this current one is. On that same note, there have already been, in the year 2019, I believe there were already over 16,000 deaths in the United States alone from the influenza virus. So we need to remember that just because something is very new and we're scared of it does not actually mean that it is as big of a problem as other things that we might already be dealing with as a species. Now, I hope that this has been helpful and that I have heightened your awareness.